let's not take the deal this time, why don't we? You stubborn buffoon, prepare to die. Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Contra Hardcore. In the last part we got several more endings, including the game's bad ending, and now it's time for us to actually go finish the game. Refusing Colonel Bahamut puts us into a short mini-boss against him. He opens and will occasionally do a fast dash across the screen. He can jump in the air and dash at you while somersaulting, and send his new power glove up in the air to grab a chunk of the base to throw at you. All the while between attacks, he's regularly going to be jumping and doing short hops across the screen as well. Some sort of homing option is really good in this fight due to that, especially so you can prioritize evasion rather than offense.
You've beaten me, but this will be no victory for you. When I die, a missile armed the alien cell will take off. You will see the world burn in the flames of hell.
We're not done yet. We got a missile to go blow up like it's a certain stage from 03. But as one would expect in a situation like this, it's not going to be a smooth ride on up. We're going to have a good amount of resistance along the way. Starting off with a familiar face, actually.
This is the final battle! The Colonel's already dead. Stop this foolishness! I could care less about the Colonel. I'm going all the way.
Deadeye Joe is back, but this is easily his least aggressive boss fight. He's going to fly from one side of the screen to the other and do a short blast of fire from his giant rifle when he reaches one side or the other. He also doesn't have much health, as you can see. It's more of a inconvenience just to make sure he's taken care of rather than anything else. Get over to the far left missile after that happens, though, as it's time for us to actually reach the missile in question, and we're gonna have to climb up it. Just make sure when you get up to the missile, you do jump onto it, though, as after a moment, this missile does still detonate. In fact, they even do a little jump prompt here, I'm assuming, because in early playtesting, people were waiting for the cutscene to move on in some form, I imagine. The climb up does have some little bugs that try to hit you along the way, but some pretty standard machine gun fire can take care of them pretty quickly. Just make sure you stay towards the middle of the screen once the auto-scrolling kicks back in, because on the top third of the rocket, there's going to be a giant worm that juts out you're going to need to worry about that can kill you. This is a very easy mini-boss, though. It just spurts out some little flies you can take up pretty easily while some more worms try to get you from below. Not a lot of health, as you can see. Welcome to the final boss of this choice route, though we do start off with a bit of a more minor boss fight first. We got another worm here to deal with. This worm, as its head will swipe left and right on the screen, will either generate some fire that will then track along the top of the missile, or it'll just try to lunge at you with its mouth, period. Keep your distance. Take the moment whenever it moves itself to actively get to the other side of the missile if you can, and you should be just fine here. This is ultimately, again, very easy, and it doesn't have too much health, though definitely more health than both the Deadeye Joe as well as the other worm we just dealt with. Once we take care of this mini-boss along the way, the actual final boss of this route will show up, the warhead of the missile itself, the alien-mounted missile's cell. Phase 1 here is definitely one of the more grotesque-looking things in the game, and it's going to fly towards the top of the screen and try to swipe at you with several hands. The hands themselves are actively your target at the start of the boss fight, though, but be warned that the arms themselves are made up of two different portions, the hand and then the skeletal arms leading up to that. Aim for the joint that connects the two of them to damage them both so you take them all out at the same time, otherwise you might have some awkward targets to deal with. After that, the main target for this boss appears this head on a stick, effectively. The way this phase works is that it'll swipe from one side to the other, drop a bunch of maggots that'll go on either side of the missile, and then reveal its weak point. Fire whatever rapid-fire weapons you got up at the head while the maggots are dropping out just to destroy them along the way, and then you can deal damage to the weak point as well. Just make sure you slide through the head as it swipes to the other side, otherwise you might take a death and lose a weapon you really want. This isn't a very hard final phase on its own, but not for nothing, the blitz of boss fights from Bahamut to here can exhaust your reserves if you're not careful. With that, time for our second to last ending.
Hey, brother. Sorry to keep you waiting.
Thanks for the hand.
Good job. You're in for a hero's welcome.
Definitely a much more triumphant ending than any of the ones on the Chase Deadeye Joe route in my eyes. With that said, it's not my favorite ending in the game because we still have one more choice left to do. I'll see you guys after these credits to talk about that. Won't lie though, something about this good job screen is one of the least satisfying ones to get in the game, even compared to the endings that are objectively just worse for the world state or leave more open. With that said, now we need to travel back to stage 4 and surrender to the Doctor this time in order to access what's technically my favorite ending route in the game.
Take them! He even has a military train. You are pathetic. Take these and get out. Huh? Don't misunderstand. I'm only freeing you in order to destroy you. I will be there to watch you draw your last breath.
Okay, I mean, thanks, guy. Not for nothing. The first chunk of this train is just some standard run and gunning, so let's actively talk about some more of the game staff. Specifically, this game's sound team has 6 people in it. Hiroshi Kobayashi, Akira Soji, Kenji Miyaoka, Michiru Yamane, Akira Yamaoka, and Hirofumi Taniguchi. If you know your Konami history, 2 of those names sound probably very familiar, but going down the list in order, Hiroshi Kobayashi seemingly started as a sound team member on Contra 3, but was a composer for Rocket Knight Adventures, Buster Groove 1 and 2, the PS1 Goemon, and the original Idol Master of all random games. This mini-boss is pretty simple, by the way. They get pulled up and down by their chain, firing their attached guns alternatively, occasionally trying to ram into each other as well to crush you. When one is destroyed, the other falls to the ground. If the one on the right falls, it tries to jump into you while the one on the left runs back and forth instead. Going back to the composers, Akira Soji started as a sound designer on Castlevania 4 before doing similar work for Rondo of Blood. They also did sound design for Sparkster on the Genesis, Snatcher, I think the TurboGrafx version specifically, as well as the first 3 Tokimeki Memorial games and their re-releases in that era. Kenji Miyaoka was also one of this game's programmers, so he went over to them there. Michiru Yamane, on the other hand, is one of the big names. She's been on Konami's sound team since '88 and is mostly known for her work on pretty much every Castlevania project from Symphony of the Night onwards. She also did work on 9 Years of Shadows, Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, Skullgirls, both versions of Sparkster, as well as Rocket Knight Adventures itself, and several Suikoden games. A fantastic composer. This mini-boss is pretty funny, by the way. It's a gigantic battery with a cannon attached to it. You can't damage this thing yourself, but after it bounces around for a little bit, it charges up a beam. You need to stand below the red dot here and have it fire at itself. 3 shots should kill it if you place yourself just right. Akira Yamaoka is the other big name on this sound team. They started as an assistant composer on Smartball for the Super Nintendo, but then did work on Sparkster, Snatcher, and some other scattered projects before becoming the main composer for the Silent Hill series from the first game up until Shattered Memories, coming back for the SH2 remake and Silent Hill F even. They also worked on the Rumble Roses titles, some Beatmania titles, Shadows of the Dam, Lollipop Chainsaw, Let It Die, and Slitterhead alongside several other titles, and another amazing composer. The boss of this stage is the Yokozuna. At the start of the fight, it dedicates its all to stopping the train while firing some homing missiles at you, some double helix projectiles like that one, and mines that walk along the surface of the train. You can hammer on the pain here, as it's just standing still, but as far as I've read online, its health seemingly doesn't start being depleted until it stands on the train, which definitely feels weird compared to the rest of the game. Make sure you don't use any bombs in the case you have some you want to use on this fight until it's standing on the train like this. At this point, it will still fire some homing missiles at you here and again, but those can be easily dispatched. It can leap back and forth in attempts to crush you, it can run to the left and attempt a rather pathetic-looking kick that can be ducked under or slid through, and it can punch the train, which will send a wave of fire along to the left, which can be easily jumped over. From there, it just kind of loops that. I think it actively only does the homing missiles at the start of this phase as a lead-in from the prior one. Going back to the composers briefly in order to finish talking about them, Hirofumi Taniguchi started as a sound designer on Contra 3 before working on this and Suikoden 1, but then they left Konami to work for Love Delic, who are the developers for Moon Remix RPG Adventure of Undertale Inspiration fame. Now, they aren't credited for that game, just UFO and LOL, that studio's latter 2 ventures. But between one of the music credits for that game being very vague as to who it's talking about, I'm assuming they just went uncredited for the original and re-release of that game. They then worked on Tulip, the original Chibi Robo, and Blackbird and Stray Children. The latter 2 of those are projects alongside other former Moon and Tulip developers. Again, really good composer. Welcome to what's not only the final stage for this specific route, but the final stage for the LP in general, and what's not for nothing probably the most final feeling of the final stages because we just take care of so many threats in direct order here. Starting off with an old friend once again.
The time has come for you to meet your maker. Let's go!
Time for our final battle against Deadeye Joe. In Phase 1, he centers his mech in the room and rotates its legs around the room clockwise. The legs, as they rotate, slowly speed up until one of them is destroyed, at which point you'll move on to Phase 2, but not for nothing, this is probably the most dangerous phase for me specifically, as it's just really easy for me to lose track of where the legs are actively going to place themselves next. Here in Phase 2, the remaining legs will rotate around the mech as it bounces around the room like a DVD player logo. With that said, it doesn't have much movement to start. As you destroy legs, though, it gets freer and freer with its movements until you destroy all three, at which point Phase 3 will begin. This phase is arguably harder than Phase 1, but I find Phase 1 more annoying if only because I have a harder time reading where just the legs are going to move rather than the entirety of the mech. In Phase 3, Joe frankly gets tired of our shit and just teleports the mech directly above you and slams it down repeatedly. Dodge out of the way, fire up at it, and repeat until the boss is down. Slides are very useful for this as usual throughout the game. Once the blue sparks like this show up, you are done with this fight. Howdy do, Joe.
You've lost. Now give it up. Ugh.
Worthless fool. I do not have time for losers like him.
You treacherous scum!
Meet me on the top floor for the ultimate battle.
If it's not obvious, at this point we're pretty much in this ending route's final boss gauntlet. Although, I'd say definitely the first two bosses in this gauntlet are easier than some of the first bosses in the other gauntlets.
Ah! Colonel, please stop!
Why? You should see the damage that your research has done.
No!
So the Doctor is our next boss, and they turn into a weird crab spider thing. Largely, this fight is this boss rotating around the arena clockwise or counterclockwise, speeding up every here and there, then shooting out some web along which it'll crawl and fire out some projectiles either in a one direct shot that will bounce once or in a spread shot in 8 different directions. You gotta really watch out for when it gets back to the floor, because at that point it can actively sweep into you pretty easily, but if you even maybe just stay on the opposite side of it by climbing along the walls, you can get through this fight pretty easily. This boss reminds me, though, something I believe I mentioned offhandedly back when I did an LP of Contra 3 is that there's a GBA version of that game, Contra the Alien Wars EX, I believe. But that port is actively missing all the top-down Mode 7 stages from Contra 3. Wherever one of those was, it gets replaced by a stage from Contra Hardcore here, and this is actually one of the stages that replaces a top-down stage, and honestly, it's kind of a weird one for that, too.
I must admit that I am shocked that you've made it this far. But it seems you are too late. My plans have been realized. I've joined my spirit with the corporeal qualities of the alien, and in the process created the ultimate super being.
Final boss for this route and the LP in general is Bahamut Overdrive, whose first form looks like a mixture of a Fist of the North Star character and a Guyver monster. Here in Phase 1, he has 3 attacks. He'll count down from 3, which ends in a fast dash across the screen like that, which you can jump over, but I just recommend sliding through instead. He can jump in the air and fire projectiles at the opposite corner of the room, but he's entirely open from below during this. And he can charge up his own Kamehameha wave, which is easily avoided with a jump in any regard, pretty much, or a slide in the case you want to. He doesn't have too much HP in this phase, but watch out because his attacks do come out pretty quickly, and it's easy to get overwhelmed on a first playthrough of this boss. Honestly, this fight's a lot harder in Contra 3 GBA, if only because you have so many fewer options to deal with him.
Too much power. Can't maintain.
Phase 2 gives him quite the size increase, but he's much less mobile due to it. He's going to jump to either extreme side of the screen and attack with one of his 2 heads. The one on the left is going to slam its neck up and down into the floor, causing projectiles to rain from the sky, while the one on the right extends its neck out of the body to worm around the screen, generally homing in on you to deal damage. The one on the left is generally easier to avoid in my experience, but as you can see, a well-placed bomb really destroys this thing's health bar. Phase 3, though, is, well, I have no idea what the hell's going on here. It's just going to float around the screen on the top half and pulsate its other faces out of its body. It doesn't have a lot of HP, but not for nothing. It can be hard to avoid the faces depending on when it decides to do a large burst or a small burst. With that, that is game. What a bizarrely Castlevania-like ending. Huh. That's Contra Hardcore, though. My thoughts on this game are kind of scattered depending on how you play it. If you play it the way it was originally released here in the Western Territories, where you only have 1 HP, I think this is easily the hardest classic Contra game. There's a lot of cool stuff to it, but the amount of stuff going on, even with the invincible slide, can be really easy to lose track of, and thus just makes it a lot less fun, especially given the more limited lives with the lack of a Konami code from my memory. If you're playing the Japanese release or the version with patches that bring back the HP bar, though, this is probably my favorite classic Contra game outside of maybe Contra 1, because there's just so much unique little bits to this game between the different endings, the absurd visual stylings of everything, and the individual character mechanics, making for a much more interesting playthrough, especially with co-op. Due to this, I really do recommend you play this if you like Contra, but I specifically recommend you either play the Japanese release or use the fan patch by Mr. Nemesis to restore the health gauge to it. A link to that has been in the description of every single video and is also in the description of the playlist at large. I'm not sure when we're going to come back to Contra on the channel at this point, because I've played most of the games I have a lot of heavy experience with. There is Contra Force on the NES, which didn't even start development as a Contra game, and there's also Contra 4 on the DS by Way Forward. Knowing me, I'll probably just end up tackling, like, the Game Boy game next, and then going into the 3D, 2.5D entries on, like, the PlayStation and PlayStation 2 at some other point, but that's later. I have other Konami games on my LP list to get to first. But with that, I'm going to need to end this LP off here. Thank you guys for watching, have a great night, take care, and I'll see you guys next Let's Play, whatever that may be. Might even be another Konami game, I say knowingly. See you guys then.